All right. Hunter Man.
We're here.
We're live.
And we're live.
We got, in true Florida fashion this evening, we've got the thunder is rolling outside.
All you had to do was say it.
There it is. It's
right
on cue.
Yep.
Show is sponsored by Garth Brooks tonight, everybody. So yeah, it's just a regular old afternoon here in the state of Florida. We got some big things this week.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about rod building blunders / how to avoid some of that stuff.
Yeah. More importantly, how to avoid those blunders that might happen, especially for your first time rod builders out there. It's some of the simple things along the way that can really kind of be a little kind of make your process a little bit harder.
Yeah.
That goes with wrapping guides. Mixing your epoxy, and we're going to get into a lot of that later on.
Yeah, you just don't want to get a little hitch in your giddy up there, right?
Yeah, that's all.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to discuss different aspects of it. We've got the extreme reamers. We're going to talk about a little reaming stuff. We're going to talk about some wrapping stuff because, can't build a custom fishing rod without wrapping. And then, of course, we're going to talk about finish.
Absolutely. Which
everybody knows. Finish can be a little tricky at times, but we figured that rather than doing a very specific thing tonight, we haven't touched on some of these not entry-level things, but helping you guys get started for the new ones out there. And you never know. We might come across something that even the experienced builders don't know about, and it's one of those. You don't know the answer to the question that you don't know.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Something like
that. And of course, we have giveaways as always. We're going to be giving away one of those Extreme Reamer kits, which is a really good value. And then for our second place giveaway, we've got a 2-spool advanced hand wrapper with an 18-spool thread pack. And for our grand prize, a little something different for this show. We're going to be giving away a remote rod building class.
Awesome.
And we have a special guest appearance later on, so we'll definitely get to that soon.
That's good.
But yeah, it's one actually Buzz Butters himself, one of the instructors for the remote classes or even the in-person classes. If you've had one of those in the past few years, he's going to be here to actually give that away. So.
That's it. We flew him in all the way from the Great White North on the Mud Hole private jet. So he came in today. But yeah, he's here. Always a ball to have. They're going to ICAST this week. So that's a big thing going on. And you want to get this thing started?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, perfect. Everybody ready? Ready? Cool, let's hit it.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission.
And, of course, we've got a big show because it's the 75th episode.
75. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Not too far away from the big 100.
Yeah,
might be sometime next year or the year after, but yeah, we're getting there.
I'm telling you, when we get to 100, boy, your credit card, I'm gonna melt that thing.
Max it out.
Absolutely.
I'll have to put out a second line of credit, maybe.
No doubt. And speaking of melting it, if you guys are paying attention, which I know that the guys and girls out there at Rod Building Land tend to pay attention. We've got some hot sauces here. Little MH Explosion, the Extreme Reaper, and we've got the Mud Hole Meltdown. Those are kind of just to help celebrate the 75th show tonight. I went in the back and grabbed these, and if you want to win one, we're going to give one away.
Cool.
So I'll have Guff kind of pick some winners, throw some in there, and yeah, we're just going to sling some hot sauce around. So since we're talking about hot, we got hot sauce.
Why not?
Why not? Why not? Hot sauce in the penthouse. Cool. All right. So we were talking about ICAST briefly.
Yep.
It is the big show that comes here to the Orange County Convention Center. And it is an industry show, but it gives us an opportunity to see some of our professional rod builders, some of our wholesalers, some of our dealers, and of course, see some cool new products.
Yeah.
And we're going to be there, and we're going to be there bigger than we have before. We've got a big booth set up over there, 2833. We're going to have a lot of team members. I know you're going to be there a little bit. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be there a little bit. We've got Stuart, who is here in the building tonight. The guys were setting it up out there today. And yeah, you can see them. They're moving rather quickly. So they turned the AC off in that building while they're setting it up. So they hustled to get in and out. But they're going to be there talking about wholesale stuff, talking about maybe a little OEM stuff, who knows. But you can see them there. We got a lot of cool new products. Got a ton of rod blanks, reel seats, all the cool things. There they are. So we've even entered into the category the push pole, I think, right? Cool. The new product showcase. So that's pretty neat. Hopefully it will, take home a little hardware. Everybody could use that. But yeah, so that's going to be Wednesday, Thursday, and about 3/4 of the day on Friday. They shut the show down about 3 o'clock on Friday, let everybody get out of Dodge. But yeah, so yeah. I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely. Last year it was canceled due to COVID, so it's awesome to be able to go back this year, see a lot of the people, that we didn't get to see last year, a lot of friends and people in the industry, so that's awesome. But yeah, ICAST is great. If you guys are in the Orlando area, definitely try to stop by. As Chris mentioned, it is an industry only. Yep. It's not available to the public, but in any case, great show, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, you can always come by Mudhole here. We're probably 45 minutes or so away. Yeah. It's all highway, toll roads, so you can get in and out pretty quick. So if you are at the show or want to do both and able to do both, why not? Come on by.
Yep.
For everybody watching in the Mudhole Live Rod Builders Workshop, 15,500. Of course, it's still growing. It's the biggest. It's the best. It's the Mudhole Live Rod Builders Workshop.
Yeah. I see a lot of these topics that we're going to talk about tonight in that group often. And of course, there's people that jump in there and answer those questions in the snap of a finger, which is awesome. And yeah, like you said, it's still growing. I'm sure that number is going to hit 20,000, 25,000 probably by the end of this year.
Probably.
Early next year. So.
Well, and that's a great point because you mentioned that that's where we got some of this from.
Yeah.
Because so many people are in there that are helping beginners. There's beginners that we saw early on in the group that are now becoming people that are experienced, that are helping the next level of beginners. So we got some of those, questions and tips and tricks and things like that. So you want to dive right in?
Let's do it. Let's talk about
it. In. Cool. All right, so we're going to talk about some rod building mistakes. We have put our heads together here at Mudhole over the years to help you guys avoid picking the wrong parts.
Yep.
So, and of course, picking parts that you need, we try to solve that with multi-option kits, rod handle kits, handle kits like this, guide set kits. The FSB2 is the famous one. That's the one that has every possible thing that you could need to start into rod building. That's gonna have a hand wrapper and a dryer. It's got a little tool set. It's got some things like that. Yep. So if you've never built a fishing rod before, go right to the FSB2. That is an absolute great, it's on the website, mudhole.com. Everybody does a great job of kind of spelling it out there in the group or people that call in customer service and they go, look, I've never been there. Yep. Never know what to get. What can I start with? That's a good one to start with. I actually still have my hand wrapper.
I was going to say, the FSB2 kit, a lot of people might not think that that's, well, I'm going to buy that kit and I might not ever use those down the line. That's not necessarily true.
Right.
Like you said, the hand wrapper is still preferred by tons of people out there.
Yep.
And you can still use this hand wrapper and incorporate it into, let's say, an RBS system, right? So you can take this hand wrapper, and it will actually, form to fit onto the RBS tracks with the, with an additional set of rollers.
Yep.
And you don't even have to buy a separate thread carriage.
No.
So you can still use these same parts and pieces that you get in your startup kit, your
right.
FSB2. You can continue to use those down the line. Your rod dryer, you can use that forever and ever. It's a tool that not necessarily has to go by the wayside as you progress as a rod builder.
Right.
So, of course, your epoxy, your thread finish, some of these tools you will have to, once you run out, you will have to buy them again.
Of course.
But the necessary equipment to build these rods, you can continue to use these down the line. They're not something that has to go away.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of the builders in the group where they'll buy the hand wrapper and things like that. And as they progress, if they do have the space and want to go to power wrapping and things like that, they'll actually take the hand wrapper and hand it down to somebody. Yeah. Whether it's, a son or a daughter or a niece or nephew or a friend that, is local that wants to get into it, they'll pass the hand wrapper down and, kind of pass the craft on. So that's part of that's what's so great about it. And of course, with all the tools, we try to do things like this. The YouTube channel, that's almost 30,000 subscribers. It's like 9.5 million views. There's all kinds of stuff on there. You can go to that channel on YouTube. I know a lot of you guys are watching through the YouTube now. It's great because you can play it on your TV, over your workbench. It's got great resolution. Yeah. And you can still interact with us here live. You don't have to be in Facebook if you don't want to. But and then of course all this is cataloged on there.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Awesome.
And you mentioned the kits as well, and that's something you definitely, as a new rod builder, or even somebody that's built 5 or 10 rods, kits are such a great value for one.
Yeah. And
also with the thousands of different options between reel seats and guides and blanks and etc. Buying a kit, when you buy that kit that the items are going to fit together. If you buy all these components separately, even here at the shop, we still don't, we have thousands, we have 30, 50,000 different SKUs.
Yes.
It's really hard to remember or even try to put all these parts and pieces together online.
Of course.
Does this reel seat fit this grip? Should I buy this guide set for this blank? If you buy an all-in-one kit, those items are tailored to that rod blank or those components.
Absolutely.
So that's a big advantage, not only for the value of the kit, but also having that security of knowing that those parts are going to fit that blank.
No doubt.
That's really important. So
perfect. All right, so we got a question coming in. Cameron, one step ahead here, and I love it. I notice when I ream my Cork handles, they come out slightly off center. Is there an easy fix? There is, and I'm going to actually, let me move some of this stuff out of the way so you can see this easier. All right, so we've got the Extreme Reamers. The Cork, about, what would you say, 90-something% of the Cork is going to come with a 250 inner?
It's like 99%.
99%.
Yeah, no, that's a little exaggerated. But
I don't know, though. I mean,
almost all Cork grips come with a 250.
Yeah, so, and I was trying to be conservative by saying 90. So, yeah, it's a lot. Okay, so a lot of the Cork grips are going to come with it. The smallest size of the Extreme Reamer is going to fit the 250, okay? And you can see that's about all you get. Now, the great thing about the Extreme Reamer set is it still comes with a handle. Is the handle down there? I don't think so.
No, I don't have one.
All right, so I'm going to open the new one. The kit, the Extreme Reamer set, comes with a handle, just like you see on a screwdriver, right? So this fits right in here. Now, you're going to think that something's wrong. They're reverse threaded. So if you notice, this is going to be a lefty-tighty, righty-loosey.
Got it.
Something like that. All right, so this has a little O-ring, a little rubber O-ring on it, and it's going to tighten down, and I'm going to back this off now. But you see, fits right in nicely. So if you want to do it by hand, you can. Now, if you're like me, I like to use a power drill. But you can booger this up. And this is where the rod building blunder thing comes in. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of a do's and don'ts on this one, because this is one that always gets you. All right, so we're going to chuck this in the drill. And again, this is the smallest extreme reamer. Now, there is not a ton, these are fiberglass, okay, a little flexible, right? There's not a ton of fiberglass and resin in this guy. It has a very thin diameter. You can heat this to the point of this failing. It takes quite a bit, but the drills now, you know, some of those DeWalt, Milwaukee, you know, they got 20, 24 volts, and they will, it's like having a hammer drill, but it's cordless, and it will twist your wrist off. It will also heat up these extreme reamers. I'm very, very cautious to recommend using the thinnest one in a drill. We do, but I'm going to warn you, so listen good. Be careful, because you can make this so hot running it through cork and composite. The composite even adds more heat to it because it's got rubber in it. It's harder to ream through, it adds more heat and friction. So just be careful, all right? This thing is just not designed to run at the highest level for, you know, 100 grips on end. And if it ever does get warm, you'll be able to feel it. Just set it down, give it a few minutes, let it come back to room temperature, and keep working with it. Don't say I didn't warn you. So just be careful with the thinnest one. All right, so now we are going to talk about reaming with this thing. It is extremely easy, as Cameron mentioned, to get off center. So I get it started, right? I am somebody that likes to actually turn the drill vertical like this, because it seems like you're a little less likely to ream it this way and this way, or this way and this way. It seems like if you kind of have the drill in a balance point, it wants to be a little more straight, all right? It's not perfect, but it wants to be a little more straight, or straighter, or whatever. I'll let Guffey sort all of that grammar out. Yep. So, working with the reamer like that, in and out, up and down, this does a little bit better job of keeping it straight. Now, another way to do that is, once you start working with this thing, if you are coordinated enough to run the drill and let the grip slip in your hand a little bit. I'm actually running it, I'm going to come right here, see if you can see this. So I'm going to run the drill, and I'm going to let it okay, so I'm letting it rotate like I'm trying to make it do half turns at a time, maybe quarter turns at a time, without just, you know, going crazy with it, right? So I'm reaming it, and I'm using little quarter turns and reaming it like that. Because if you just go at it and you're off center, you are going to create an oval hole. And of course, it doesn't look too bad if it is kind of out of whack. When you look at it like this, you're like, oh, that's not too bad. But when you get it on a rod blank, your back half is low, your front half is high, and then your grip is like this, okay? And then when it comes to your reel seat, you know, it's one of these deals. Now, granted, I know that this is exaggerated, but it's surprising how little it has to be off to look as bad as it can. Yep. It really does. So I recommend a couple things, as I mentioned. Try it like this, okay? That'll help you ream it. That's kind of more upright. It'll keep you from getting here. It'll keep you from getting here. Up and down like that. Also, let it rotate a little bit in your hand as you're using it when you're going in and out. Also, when you start to get to a larger diameter, you might fall in between reamers, okay? So use the smaller size reamer and actually take the reamer. We're going to ream this out real quick. All right, so once we have reached the bottom of this size reamer, rather than going to the next size, go in and out like that. Turn the grip like 90 degrees. Go in and out. Turn the grip 90 degrees. In and out like that. And you can actually smooth out, if you notice the hole in the cork has got a little bit of a, kind of cattywampus there. It's a little oblong and it's not quite round. You can actually, don't go up to the next size. Just stay with the size you have when it's bottomed out, in and out as you rotate around, and you can actually work that opening to be a little more round.
Gotcha, cool.
So those are a couple things there. And of course, if you do get in a bind, and it is really kind of at a round, and you've got no other option, and you got winding checks, just ream it out with the next size up, get it as even as you possibly can, and put some tape arbors under it and winding checks, and that can save your day.
Yeah, that'll work.
That's, that's the 911. That's the, you got no other shot. Do that. But those are a couple reaming tips to keep things straight. The cork, I wouldn't say that it's too bad. It's fairly forgiving because you're not just going to eat through it like that. Some of those arbors are extremely sensitive. For example, this is a custom handle kit. This is the palm swell seat. We've got an arbor in it. These arbors, although very strong when you put epoxy on them, they're very, very easy to ream. So, I mean, this is even one that you could probably get away with reaming without even having to screw the handle on here. Yeah. So be very careful with these guys and a power drill, because not only can you fly through one, you can make one like super out of round. Yeah. So.
Grayson's got a question. Is there anything I can do if I over-ream an EVA grip? And you kind of answered that earlier. You can use tape to kind of arbor that grip up so it will actually fit your blank. Yep. And then just use winding checks as needed to kind of cover up that, that over-reaming of the grip. So. Yep.
Now, Grayson, too, another tip that falls under this. If you have an EVA grip, so EVA or wind grip, which the wind grip is the polymer on the outside of an EVA core, you can actually be a little more conservative on your reaming because it stretches.
Right.
So, try to be careful on the EVA and use the EVA as like a little bit of an insurance policy. When you don't know quite how much you need to ream, if you start to think like, oh, I don't know if that's enough, definitely check it. Because cork, you've got to get it reamed out to the diameter of where that grip needs to sit. But with EVA, if it stops about a foot above where you need to get it to, that EVA will stretch and slide. So remember that aspect.
That's a great point, because with cork, like you said, you don't want to force it, because you can bust cork in a heartbeat. Yeah. EVA is really, it's a very durable material. It's hard to break it, especially just sliding it down the blank. Yeah. And with a little bit of glue, you can really make it go, another 12, 18 inches.
Yeah, so. Easy, for sure. I mean, yeah, you're right. You can do that. So yeah, just when you're using cork, you got to kind of ream it to where it needs to get to. Another tip, if you guys are using a digital caliper, which I think I left at my desk, but it's not the end of the world. You can actually mic the outside of this reamer. Then you can actually take and run a piece of tape and it will give you a little bit of an insurance policy on, see how quick that is? You guys didn't even see me going. All right, so if you've got your digital caliper, which is one of those, you need to have one of these on your rod building.
Absolutely.
No doubt. So this guy here, digital caliper. All right, so if you've got your blank, you're going to mic your blank. And you really don't even need to know the number measurement because your digital caliper has a little stop nut on the top here. It's kind of like a set screw. So now it won't move. Whoop, of course it did. It's live, everybody. All right, so I'm going to tighten the set screw now that we've got that mark. Then what we do is we come to our reamers. That's close. It's actually very, very close there. So what I'm going to do is I would put a piece of tape there, okay? If it was a little bit larger and it maybe fell like halfway here, you know, and spin the reamer because remember, it's kind of candy cane there. So that's about the, you know, the approximate area it's going to be. Take it, put you a piece of tape like this, and just rough wrap it. I do it a couple times so we don't tear it off. And then that's your stop mark, because we've all been there.
Absolutely.
I've been going like, oh, okay, yeah, it's just about halfway down. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that grip and I'm going to run about halfway. Next thing you know, you've gone past the mark. You don't know it. And now we got a grip that's just like, oh, what are we going to do with this now? And then, of course, it's probably you don't have an extra, and it's Friday night, and you're trying to get something built, and we've all been there.
All been there, absolutely.
So yeah, that's another little extra tip of safe reaming. Ream safely, folks. Right?
Exactly. Let's do another question. Robert, what do you guys use to coat the cork? You can use cork seal. U40 makes a product called Cork Seal, and it's great. It'll help preserve your cork over time because cork is a natural material. So over time, wear and tear when you're fishing, it will take that top coating off of the cork. There's a little bit of filler typically in cork, so that can kind of eat away over time. So that Cork Seal kind of just protects it and just preserves your cork for a little bit longer. So.
Yeah. And it doesn't have like a weird texture or anything like that. I mean, it's, you know, there's a personal preference on whether you like it or you don't like it, but it's not like it's sticky or tacky, or it's not like you're putting pine tar on a baseball bat. You know, it's not like a crazy kind of texture or anything. So it's
some
that's
under
it.
here.
Is there under there? Yeah.
Yep, there is right there.
That's the guy right there. There it is.
And that jar will last you a very long time.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to coat the grip, so.
Nope, not at all. I turn it the wrong way. Yep, there we go. It's like looking at a mirror. But yeah, so that's it. Good stuff for sure. And what you want to do is, when we apply this, give me a piece of paper towel there. I'm just going to show you since I got it. I take it, put it on a paper towel. Just a little bit there. And we're just going to do a thin coat and just brush it on. Okay? You can use brushes. Now, granted, if I had this in a hand wrapper or a power wrapper or something like that, that's how I would do it. But you can use a brush. You can kind of see it just going on there. This is not something that you need to pour on here. You don't need to dip it. Nothing like that. You're going to do one just nice even coat. And it's only going to take so much, you know. So it'll absorb into it because the cork is kind of a natural material. Kind of. Yeah.
Kind of.
And there you go. So you can see, here's the difference. It's not that much of a difference in color. So the bottom one's got Cork Seal on it, the top one doesn't. So it's not something that, you know, you're going to hand somebody and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, what did you do to my cork grip? You know, you can't really tell, but it's there and it protects it.
Definitely.
So it's good.
Let's do one more question. This is a good one. Jerry, how much do you ream a cork grip to make sure enough paste is applied? So that's a great question. Typically for me, I ream that cork grip to fit exactly where it's going to be on the rod blank. I don't ream any extra, and obviously I don't ream anything under that, because you want a really snug, tight fit to your rod blank. If you do happen to ream it a little bit too much, you know, your thinking might be, okay, I want to save a little bit of extra room for epoxy. Well, at least in my opinion, I wouldn't do that. I like the grip to be snug to the rod blank, and you know, if you do happen to over-ream it just a little bit and it goes too far past that point, well, now you're having to kind of push it back up, and that inside diameter is going to be larger than the OD of your blank.
Yep.
So now you're having to use a winding check or something to kind of cover up that gap. You know, the epoxy is going to be a very, very thin layer. It's not going to be that much to kind of compensate for that extra, you know, gap between your grip and your rod blank. So
yep.
My personal preference, I ream it to fit exactly where I want on the rod blank, no less, no more.
Yep, I agree with you.
Cool.
That's easy there. I mean, a very, very thin layer of epoxy is no stronger than just a big giant mass under, you know, under the grip. So no reason to just not make it snug. I actually do it, maybe even like, you know, on cork, I might even stop it like a little smidge just because I know it's gonna kind of force it down. Not force it down, but slide it down just a little more, because there's voids and stuff under that cork, and
That's a good point.
The epoxy will get all in there and do what it needs to do. So yeah, I'm not allowing any extra space. So cool. All right.
Let's do a giveaway. What do you think?
I think we should. Perfect.
So we're going to be giving away, giveaway number 1 is going to be the Extreme Reamer set, which comes with, I think, 5 sizes?
Or 4.
Or 4 sizes.
Yeah.
But you obviously get the handle included, and you're able to do rods from ultralights all the way up to some offshore rods with that set. So great starter set of reamers.
That's the one.
Let's do winner out of Facebook, Tamra Tatro.
Sure.
Tamra Tatro. Sorry if I butchered your name there.
He does it to everybody.
Yeah, I do. They love to pick the harder names to pronounce.
You wonder why
that
I let you do it.
Yep. That's all right. We'll see about the next one.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah. We'll set that aside and put it on your credit card, and we'll be good to go.
All right. What we got next?
All right. We're going to talk about wrapping.
Okay.
Because it's just one of those things that everybody wants to talk about, everybody's got their opinion on, and we just want to make sure you're headed in the right direction. So we've got the advanced hand wrapper system.
Okay.
This is the 2-spool. Looks very, very similar to the one that we've had for years and years. The thread carriage on this one is a little nicer than it used to be. It's got a little bit bigger knobs, got some spacers in here. The tension ring is a little beefier. And then, of course, we've got some insets down in here so you can put guides and razor blades and all that stuff. But the true, like, the guts of this are the same. We got our slider, the stands slide in and out. They're just a little easier to adjust the tension on them. Now, everybody is always asking about how much tension to put on some guides. So I'm going to show you how I set this up. So let's spin this around, take this rod off here real quick. All right. So the way that I set up my hand wrapper is, you will notice I have the thread coming off the bottom of the spool. It really keeps it in line with this first hook, I guess you would say, because it's not really an eye bolt, but it's more of a guide, I would say. So we come off the bottom of the spool and we go under that guide there. All right. So that's going to help kind of keep everything in line. Then we go up to your tension rod. So we go bottom of the spool, from there up to the tension rod. We're going to go down to the center guy there, right? Is that how you do yours?
Yeah, you can do either or. I usually either go right to the slider or you can go to the middle as well.
Okay. Well, see, now I'm looking at it backwards. You got me all messed up. No, I go like that. I go middle of that and then up. Okay? Is that not how you do it?
Sure.
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 All right, cool. So that's how I do it. You know, there's a couple different options. Here, right out front, up to the tension. There, out front here to the slider. We're going to go up to the rod. Now that we've got that lined up, you know, it's funny. You never really kind of know how you do it until somebody asks you. You're on live, and you're like, yeah, how do I do that? So, when the tension is properly set, and you're standing looking down, I do not want this tension rod way down here and humped over, okay? I like it to be pointing maybe at my chin, maybe up here, upper chest. I don't want it pointed at a belt buckle, belly button, nothing like that, okay? The good news is this, now you can take this slider and slide this slider left and right, okay? So if you do need to work on a guide way, way over here off to the side, you can adjust your stand in or out. You can work your slider over here, and you can start wrapping, okay? So when I start, because the blanks are, some of them are gloss, some of them have a satin finish on them, some have a painted finish, you'll notice that the blank is, the thread can slip on the blank depending on the finish on it. So something for me that has helped fix the thread slipping is I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to go over the top of the blank. I'm going to come underneath, all right? And I'm going to go to the direction I'm wrapping, so I'm going to slide that way. I'm then going to go around again, okay? So now I've got 2 wraps on that blank, okay? Going around twice, and then I'm going to take my left thumb and I'm going to put this standing wrap over the tag end, and it's going to help capture the thread a little bit easier. You see there, I'm still under tension, it's captured it, and there we have it. So the only thing is, you'll have some space in between these 2 threads. So I will actually pull on this thread as I turn the blank, and when I do that, it will actually pinch those threads together because I'm technically picking up the slack, and then we're going to wrap, okay? Then we just wrap like normal. You can see the tension kind of comes on and off a little. That's just the thread going through the eyes. It's no big deal. It's not fraying it. It's not anything like that. And the best news is, when Mom says your Hot Pockets are ready, you don't even have to finish the guide. You still have tension there. Your wrap is still intact. You just cut your tag end, and you're ready to rock. Now, what you do not want to do, and I think one of the guys illustrated it in the video for this, is be sure that when you finish your guide wrap, do not just cut it under tension. Because if you cut this under tension, stuff's going to go haywire.
Yep.
Always apply pressure with your finger to the top of this wrap. What that's going to do is that's going to hold that wrap. I then just grab the thread here where it comes off the spool, okay? So I'm just going to grab the thread here, and I'm just going to back the tension off. You can see now this has no tension on it. And then what we're going to be able to do is cut the thread, and it's all good. Your thread back here is still left in the slider eye, so then you don't have to go hunting for it, and you're good to go. If you cut this under tension, which again, I don't recommend doing. Get this straight here. The weight is really coming down outside. So if you cut this under tension, it can really create a mess.
Yep.
So then you got to go hunt back through this. You create a little maze here with the thread. I don't even know what direction that is. Now you're going to get it in the spring maybe. So don't do that.
It's those little headaches along the way that can, you know, it takes usually what, maybe an hour to wrap guides, if not 30 minutes.
Yeah.
That could easily turn to a couple hours, or you having to just step away because you're too frustrated to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just a couple of tips there to get you started. In regards to the area to stop a guide, a lot of people, and we actually talked about this in the group today, we talked about a locking wrap, or how high up the guide do you wrap. I am someone that probably hangs the thread back down the guide foot, probably more than most, I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah.
The reason that I do that is because the more you get closer, the closer you get to the upright here, so you have the foot that's under the thread, okay? And then you have where the guide turns, and it depends on if it's a small running guide, it might turn at 90 degrees, it might turn, get you over here. So you're upright here, it might turn to 90 straight up. This one's probably 45. It can vary here. So to me, this thread has now started to climb this upright. This is too close. This is too much thread for me. The reason being is, just like with water tension, finish has a tension, okay? And you want to coat all your threads. So if you put finish on your threads that are this high up, you're going to have finish out on the blank a little, and you're going to have finish above the thread on this upright. As this rod blank spins, the finish is going to want to stay up there, and it's going to cause it to collect under here, okay? It's going to pull it a little bit. The reason for that is because it's going to want to climb it, the foot a little, and stay on this thread, and then now you're going to have a little pull under here, and it's going to be, in my opinion, messy, all right? So it's just not going to look as clean as it could. This guide wrap here, actually the threads stop probably 1/16 of an inch before the upright. In my opinion, it gives you a little bit of room to hang a few bristles off the edge of these threads, make sure everything's coated nicely, but it's not going to pool and puddle and gather in here behind this upright and the blank, and then it's just going to kind of create a mess there. So I would recommend doing it this way. A lot of guide feet now have an arrow shaped on them. Some of them even look like little Christmas trees. So you kind of have a little stair step on the guide. All of those things, some of them have little dimples in them. So all of those guide feet are there to help fight the guide getting snatched out from under the thread. And if you have proper tension, you apply finish, you're more than likely not going to snatch a guide foot out from under the thread. Now granted, there's times where, I've seen people do the darndest things and get guides hung on different, trees and bushes and pulling out of a rod box, get it hung in a window, something like that. I'm not saying that you can't snatch one out from underneath there, but in typical fishing environments, we just don't have them get snatched out all the time, or at all, honestly, out from under a thread like that.
And this tip is especially important on smaller guides.
Yes.
Because, if you're getting down into a size 5, size 4 guide, or even some of like the nano micro guides, they're barely off the rod blank.
Right.
So, there's hardly any frame, really, just a slight curve, and then you're at the ring.
Yes.
So if you do happen to, for instance, if you use like the first example you used, if you did that to a smaller guide and added a little bit of finish on the top, well, that finish is going to run right up to the bottom of the ring, and then, might cause some problems. So.
Yeah, and you're right, it will actually touch the bottom of the ring, and then if you look at it from the side, the finish is like this. So it's created a little triangle because of the tension. If you bump the bottom of that ring, or it wants to climb that thread, and now you're there and it's going to puddle there, you've created this little teepee of finish, and man, it looks just sloppy.
Yeah, just not a very good look.
Yep.
But yeah, and of course the 1/16th of an inch, like you mentioned, of less thread is not gonna hurt.
No.
It's not gonna hurt you at all. If anything, it's gonna help you because you're gonna be using, obviously it's not much, but you're using less thread, you're using less finish.
Yeah.
That guide is not going anywhere.
No.
With that little bit of less thread, there's no issues of that guide coming out or pulling out. So.
Right, yeah, and there's no reason to have that extra epoxy for strength or for anything like that.
Yeah.
Like you said, 2 turns of thread is not going to do anything to help, honestly. It's only going to hurt. So, Mike's got a question there. Do you want to have a little epoxy under the guide to help attach it to the blank? I think, Mike, what he's asking there is just, like in this little cavity back here, I believe. So when you have a guide foot, and we'll use the burnishing tool as a guide foot. So when you have a guide foot, the thread actually, it sits on the blank that's down here. It actually comes up this side of the foot, and it goes down this side of the foot. And you have a little tiny tunnel in here. This is another reason why I don't use color preserver, but that's another touchy subject for another time. So you have the thread like this, up over the top of the guide foot and down. The epoxy gets into the threads and it fills this cavity in here. So really, any excess epoxy on the back side of that guide, you really don't need.
Nope.
Because the thread's holding it down, the epoxy is encapsulating the foot all around it. And if you've ever cut off thread that doesn't have color preserver on it, you can actually, when you peel this guide foot off of the blank, there's like a little groove there. It's like a rut, and there's finish all over it. So now there's a little indentation there because there was finish there all around that guide foot, and then when you peel that thread back, it's left there. So you don't need to add any excess finish out back, out the back side of this or pool it or anything like that. There's really just no added benefit there except, it's gonna create a cleaner look for y'all.
Yeah, because the thread is holding the guide to the rod blank.
Yeah.
And then the finish is just preserving the thread and making it more durable, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and stronger. It's
stronger,
it's why they put rebarb and rebar and concrete.
But the finish isn't necessarily there to hold the guide to the rod blank. It's more so to protect your thread and conceal those threads that are holding your guide to the blank. So
yeah, it's one of those like, the sum of the parts is, So, all right. What else do we have? What are the things to watch out for when prepping guides? Bruce, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
You've seen us use a file. You've seen us use a Dremel tool. You've seen us use sandpaper. It's one of those things that getting that thread to jump up onto the guide foot is a very, very important aspect of this whole thing. Yeah. So with some guide feet, it will have a very blunt nose on it. So in a very poor example, the guide foot can look like this. So you can have one where even, the coating has even created a little bit of a bubble, like a little bulb on the foot. You want a guide foot to not look like this end of the burnishing tool. You want it to look like this end of the burnishing tool. So I do, and this is going to sound, it might come across wrong, I do as little as possible to that guide foot to get it to look like this. So I am not somebody that gets on a grinder and goes crazy with it. I think the only time I really get on like a bench grinder and go kind of wild is if you have an ice rod blank and that diameter of that blank is so little and actually the guide foot is wider than the blank, and it actually makes it look like this. You really need to like grind that guide foot down. That guide foot needs to be the width of the blank. So if you do have a situation of this is your guide foot and this is your blank, and that's what it looks like, you better get the Dremel and the bench grinder out. But otherwise, I'm just going to take, and do you have that? You had like a spinning, did you have a bigger spinning guide over there?
No, these are both casting.
That's okay. So I'm literally just going to, yeah, pull that one out of there. Just going to kind of show hand placement really quickly. Give me the big one. Yep.
There you go.
Okay, so if you have the big one, this works for all of them. We have prepped this foot. I know it's kind of difficult to see, but that foot has a really nice point on the end of it. Yep, you can see that taper. I'm going to roll it over here as you see. You can see that foot has a little bit of a taper, and then it has a little bit of an arrowhead to it. So this is, what guide set is that? That's the Elite. Yep, that's the CRB Elites. So really, there's very little prep you've got to do to that one. But it's got the arrow on it, so you don't have to do a locking wrap. It holds under nicely. It's got a nice prepped foot. If anything, I'm just going to barely touch that with some sandpaper. But I will say, when you use a Dremel tool, when you use a grinder, when you use a little bit of sandpaper, I'm not opposed. I don't want to polish that foot to be like mirror smooth, because when I grind that foot down a little, if it has a little bit of texture to it, the thread will actually grab it better. If you take and you polish that guide foot to like, you know, a mirror finish, one, you don't need to, you're just doing extra work, and two, your thread has a tendency to slide off it a little bit. Now don't leave it rough so it like burrs up your thread, but when you do prep your guide feet, for me, it's like kind of two birds, one stone here. It helps it jump it because of the great taper that you're providing that foot, but also it has a little bit of texture to that foot, so that thread just doesn't want to jump off of it every time, because boy, that can get frustrating.
Yep.
So,
yep. Cool.
All right.
Let's do another giveaway.
Absolutely. We were just talking about the CRB Advanced Hand Wrapper System that you see there. That's the one with the 2-spool. I still use that one a lot.
I love it.
I use it.
Can't beat it.
Now the 4-spool is great when you're doing like tiger wraps and some different things like that. But the 2-spool is just, it's the OG. The OG.
Yeah, love it. All right,
you're also going to give them what?
So yeah, we got the 2-spool Advanced Hand Wrapper, and then we also are doing an 18-spool thread pack. And that winner is, I'll let you go ahead and do that one.
Oh, look at you.
Since it's
coming out of YouTube, David Perez. So that's
nice.
AHWS, so that's the Advanced Hand Wrapper System with an 18-spool thread pack.
Awesome. Great prize.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, last but not least, let's talk about finish.
Let's talk about finish.
Yeah, because wrapping guides, that's one thing, but finish can be a whole nother animal.
You want to talk about some language? I'm telling you, boy.
Yep, you got it.
You can start slinging them.
I'm going to move us over just a little bit.
I'm going to pull this out and get this. Here, I'll give you that way, because you're going to want that stain.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Thanks. All right, so we got our RDS rod dryer with the CRB clutch in here, so it makes it very easy to.
You know me, that's my favorite.
To stop and start. So we'll get that spinning. All right, so let's talk about finish. A couple tools that you don't have to have, but I strongly recommend you guys get. For one, you gotta have some foil dishes.
Oh yeah.
Gotta have those. We gotta have, obviously, some finish, which I've got our Pro Coat High Build here. Disposable brushes, whether you get the 1/4 inch, the yellow brushes, or you get the 1/8 inch purple brushes, which I think you like the 1/8 inch, right? Or you did the 1/4? Okay.
Use the 1/4s, yeah.
Mixing sticks, which we also have, M10 is the part number.
Yeah.
So it's 10 sticks and 10 mixing cups. very useful to have. So obviously I'm going to get a...
I like the packaging.
Yeah, we got a little upgraded packaging. Yeah, what about that?
Looking pretty sharp.
We're getting
Pretty
fancy.
sharp.
So I've already got a mixing cup here. And then we've got our alcohol torch for later. You guys can also use the glass lamps. Those work great too.
Yeah.
And then I've got my epoxy mixer over here as well.
Cool. Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
Because I think I left out a part on prepping the guide, and I see Bruce Camp's question there where he said
go for it.
things to watch out for. When you're prepping that guide foot and you get too heavy on the grinder, you can actually bend over the foot.
Oh, roll the foot over?
You can roll the foot. So when you roll the foot, you now have a burr on the bottom of that guide.
Yeah.
So Bruce, I apologize. Kind of got you guys. We're 75 episodes into this. If you think that sometimes I don't go off on a tangent and forget the question, yeah, y'all got another thing coming. Anyway, 75 episodes in, you get it. So Bruce, watch out. If you go heavy on the guide prep, you can actually roll the edge, just like if a knife blade can actually get a roll in it. So be careful.
Yeah.
When you roll that edge, it gets very sharp, and you can scratch the blank and you might break it because of it. So you don't want to put a gash in that blank because you've rolled that foot. So even if you have to, check the bottom of that foot on the back of your hand, check the bottom of the foot on your fingernail, just like you would check like a hook point.
Yeah.
You check a hook point and the bottom of that guide scratches your fingernail, it's going to scratch that blank. So that's something to look out for.
Cool.
Now back to finish.
And I'm sure you guys can hear the thunder and the rain and everything. It is absolutely pouring outside. So again, sorry for the background noise. I'll try to talk a little bit loud enough.
We're having a sun shower, as you can see.
Yeah, I'll try to talk a little bit over that if I can. All right, so let's mix some epoxy. First thing we got to do is obviously we've got our Pro Coat High build. Yeah. I'm just going to pull out probably, let's do like two cc's of each.
Okay. And now you're using the caps in a pinch there.
Yes.
You can poke a hole in the caps.
Well, it's just what we had on the table. So if you guys,
that was us, yeah.
Yeah. So a little tip, I guess, that I could pass along. You guys, your idea. If you guys do not have the BCSIs, which you should,
you gotta have them.
I mean, they're extremely inexpensive. Get half a dozen of them.
Yeah.
If you don't, the Pro Coat does happen to come with these red.
It's just a sealing cap.
Yeah, a sealing cap.
Yeah, packaged.
Now there's usually a screw cap over top of this, but underneath there's these red sealing caps. You can just poke holes in the sealing caps and then put your syringes in, and it works great. Yeah. Also, just buy BCSIs.
Yes. It doesn't work as good as the BCSI. I'm going to tell you right now. But if you're in a pinch and you're waiting on BCSIs or you don't have any, it's a backup. It's your tip for the evening there.
Okay, so I'm gonna pull out 2 cc's of each, which is probably the minimum that I would recommend when you're going to mix epoxy. I usually shoot for 3 of each. I didn't get enough in that one.
Yeah, which I'll agree with you on that one. It's just one of those deals that you just don't have enough. You create too much air and it can be a mess.
Yeah, there we go. Got it that time.
So.
All right, 2 cc's of each. Now I'm going to put this in my mixing cup first. And I'm going to take my stirring stick, which you can either use the plastic mixing sticks that come with the M10. This happens to be one of the little bit nicer plastic sticks.
A little flat spot on it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the thing with epoxy is you want to go slow. You don't want to just come in and start whipping up this epoxy right away.
No?
You don't want to do that.
No.
That's going to cause air bubbles, and as you guys will see later, or if you ever experience air bubbles in your epoxy, they're no fun.
No.
You can get rid of them, but why try to go through the trouble get rid of them when you can just try to eliminate them from the start, right?
Just don't put them in there.
Don't put them in there.
Yeah. Steve's got a question while we're talking about finish and while you're whipping that one up there. He said his finish, Steve's finish, Pro Coat, had turned white after fishing the rod for a few days. Any idea what I did wrong? Turned white. Steve, the only thing that I can think of is that maybe you got a little water underneath that finish, I would go back and check to be sure that the finish sealed on that blank properly. Do you think it maybe came in like a guide foot?
Could have.
Steve, little follow-up question here. Did it go back clear? Were you able to dry it out? Did it go clear again? If so, that's probably what happened. What I would do is I would go back in and I would put a sealing coat over it. And also, did all of the guides do it? If not all of the guides did it, or if one of the sections, maybe like in the handle or around a guide foot or something like that, if it did it but the other area didn't, it could be that maybe water got underneath it.
I have seen, and this was a mistake on my part, living in Florida, we have tons of humidity, right?
Yeah.
In the summertime, occasionally I would store my rods in the boat after the boat either had been rained on or if there was a lot of humidity in the rod lockers.
Well, that's where I was thinking.
And I have seen guide wraps not really turn white, but a little bit almost cloudy, foggy, now, again.
But they don't stay like that.
They didn't stay like that. They will eventually, it took a day or so, but it's almost like you said, the moisture that did happen to get under that guide wrap, it kind of just, it got out, it warmed up and the moisture kind of left the guide wrap. So,
that's the only thing I can think of. Maybe keep an eye on it. It shouldn't turn white because and stay that way. If it turned white, it could be because moisture got underneath somewhere, whether it's at the edge of the thread, whether it's behind a guide foot or something like that. Like you said, in like mega wet environments and heat, if there is an area that's not sealed off properly, that's the only time we've seen something like that. But what I would do is just keep an eye on it, let it dry out, maybe take a little heat to it on a heat gun to help it dry out, and put a sealing coat over the top of it. You don't need much, just a thin coat to kind of maybe close it up. That should fix it. But yeah, I remember we've seen it.
Yeah.
But it's rare.
Yeah.
It's rare. And I think that's what it was. So that's my guess.
It's
not actually the finish turning white.
So back to the epoxy. So what I've done here, I've been mixing this for probably a couple minutes now. And what I like to do is actually, if you guys can see, I'll try to turn it here. So instead of like really whipping this finish up, I like to fold it. So I'll start kind of at the bottom and I'll go towards the top and kind of just lay it over itself. And you can do this, clockwise and counterclockwise. That's a good way to mix the epoxy without actually having to incorporate extra air bubbles. And if you have an epoxy mixer, just use the epoxy mixer. It's so much easier. You can just drop it in the epoxy mixer for 3 to 5 minutes and come back and your epoxy is ready to roll. So much
set
easier.
It and forget it.
Yep.
A great time to use the epoxy mixer is put the finish in the mixer. That's when you take your rod from your wrapper, align your guides, make sure everything moves. Gotta wiggle this one, that one, whatever. By the time you're done aligning your guides and got it in the dryer, you're already ready.
Yep. So after we mix this, either with an epoxy mixer or by hand for at least, like I said, 3 to 5 minutes, we're gonna transfer this from our plastic mixing cup to our aluminum foil dish. And so what this does is, it's actually gonna create a larger surface area for the epoxy. And what that does is helps you release bubbles for one. And if I can get all of this out of there, perfect. It actually kind of kickstarts this, the epoxy to set, which I know that sounds kind of crazy. Why would you want it to go faster? But for me, at least, it helps because I don't really like working with whoa, that was a loud one. I don't like working with really thin epoxy sometimes.
Yeah.
I like it to kind of be not fully set, obviously, but kind of almost in the middle.
Sure.
Like it's starting to set up, so I can get a feel for kind of the viscosity when you go to apply it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That was like in the showroom.
Yeah, that was close. That was very close.
Yeah.
So, after I've got my epoxy in
I think it blew the headset off of Jay's head back there.
I'm sure it did.
His headphones shot off his head.
So after I've got the epoxy in our foil dish, I can already tell that a lot of the bubbles have already kind of dissipated. They're gone now. There's only a little bit remaining. And once that really spreads out even more, they'll basically, go all the way.
Yeah.
You can also, there's a couple different ways to even more get rid of the bubbles.
Yeah.
You can use your breath, just like that.
Right.
And that'll dissipate them even more.
Perfect.
So that's pretty much all I've got for, getting rid of bubbles. Once you're at this point to actually apply the epoxy on the thread,
Yep.
you shouldn't have many, if any, left at all.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
but I'm telling you, if you're not using the foil dishes, I'm with you, Hunter.
Yep.
I got it. That's something I gotta have.
So one thing I do is, now you can do this with either your plastic mixing cup that you use first, or you can do it with the aluminum dish, either one, but save one of them.
Yeah.
Don't toss both of them. Toss one, but don't toss both.
It's a great tip.
Because what you can do is, after this epoxy is set, instead of going up to your guide wrap and using your finger and saying, I wonder if this finish is set up yet.
Yeah.
And then you go to touch it and you leave a fingerprint, that's not what you want to do. So save one of these, because what you can do is obviously, use your finger to touch that, or see if your stick, can move out of the cup.
Yep.
If it still moves, obviously the epoxy isn't set, but if it's stuck to that cup, then you're good to go.
Absolutely. John's got a question. He said, what's the room temperature? 70 to 80 degrees works good for epoxy. John, you're exactly right. The room that we're in right now is 75 degrees, and it's about 104 behind these lights.
It's very hot.
But no, it's 75 in here. We actually do a lot of the work that you see on the show. We do it in here. Where we work at our desks, we run the AC colder, but we do try to keep it 74, 75 here in the penthouse in the studio. That way, anything we got going on, we know that it's the same temperature all the time. There's no fluctuations, and it does a really good job of that. So,
a couple things before I actually get to the next part. If you guys are doing decals, I would not use this epoxy right away. I would either, if I mixed up a batch of epoxy, maybe I'd do a couple guides first, go halfway up the rod, and then I would go back and do the decal.
Perfect.
I would never mix my epoxy and then go straight to my decal.
Right.
Because that's what we have, we call that hot finish,
Yep.
which means it's literally a little bit too hot to actually apply to that decal.
Sure.
It will cause it to lift, it'll cause unnecessary things that you do not want. So,
Yeah.
all right,
it's a great tip.
let's talk a little bit about applying finish. Now, I know you have a great tip with the brush. We've covered that tons of times. Make sure the bristles of your brush are either flat or take off the little flyaways, I guess
that's a good way to say it, because sometimes you get a little, you get one out there.
So you've covered that before. Take a razor blade, cut that even on each side, and it makes it really easy to apply finish. What I want to talk about though is applying too much finish.
Okay.
That can be one of the most common issues that I see that can cause footballs. It can cause epoxy to go up that frame like you were talking about earlier.
Yep.
I usually like to start with less than I think I need and then add more as I go.
Okay.
So for instance, and even that time I grabbed a little bit too much. So I usually grab, let's see if you guys can see that right there. I'll usually grab a little, a decent amount, and I'll actually just kind of brush a little bit away.
Okay.
And then I'll come in and start kind of right in the middle. And you can see that wasn't much epoxy at all, but I go a little bit at each time. And then where I leave off, I'll start my next kind of streak of epoxy, I guess you could say.
Okay.
And so at this point, all I'm really doing is just kind of wetting the thread.
Yeah, I can dig it.
And I'll let that spin around a few times. And especially if you plan to do multiple coats, there's no reason at all for this first coat of epoxy to have a huge buildup.
Sure.
You can start very light. And even if you're just going to do one coat, again, there's no reason to come on here with a huge amount of finish like that that's eventually just going to spin off anyway.
Yeah.
When we go to apply heat to this in a few minutes, that's just going to drip, half of that epoxy is just going to drip right off.
For sure.
So what I like to do is always start with...
Thank goodness.
Yeah, that's exactly where your footballs happen. You know, when you apply too much finish, this is set up just a little bit enough to where it is staying on there.
Yeah.
And if this continued to dry overnight, that's exactly how it would look when you go back the next morning.
Yeah, it has like you said, that's where the football term comes from. It just has a big bulge in the middle, and
you can easily take that amount of epoxy off, no big deal. But again, you know, why would you want to have to do that when you can just start with a small amount of epoxy and kind of build it up?
Sure.
And also, when you kind of glob that finish on, it also makes it a lot tougher to get your straight edges, because now you see I'm worried about a little bit of epoxy that ran off to the side, and now I have to compensate for that and make my lines a little bit, you know, bigger,
Yep.
a little bit wider on each side. And so you can see I'm still taking epoxy off of there. So what I like to do again is start with a minimal amount, kind of wet the threads fully around as it rotates, and then add if needed.
Sure.
Usually it's only going to take maybe 2 to 3 times of applying those minimal amounts.
Okay.
And I've got enough epoxy to coat that guide.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and you kind of learn your own technique, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
yeah,
then you'll almost be able just to now, like you'll know how much to put on the brush to get that coverage that you want on that guide, and then that'll help you speed up, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
And another thing too is, like I said, I usually will do that 2, maybe 3 times. And what I like to do is I'll go to the next guide.
Okay.
I'll do the same thing, and then I'll come back to that first guide, see how it looks, because these thread finishes are self-leveling. They do a lot of the work, you know, by themselves. You don't have to really touch them.
Sure.
So like this one, you can see I really haven't touched it in probably 30, 45 seconds. And a lot of those little imperfections that I saw a minute ago have kind of leveled themselves out. They're not even an issue
Like
anymore.
kind of like streak marks from the brushes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, I think that's a great point, because you'll come up 2 or 3 guides as you work, and then go back and check on that first one.
Yep.
And then you'll either know, oh, that's good, or, well, I need to do,
Maybe I need to add a little bit more.
take some off, whatever.
Yeah.
All right,
And
cool.
again, I would, if I needed to come in and add a little bit more, I would just maybe drop somewhere I felt like was necessary.
Okay.
And if you wanted to wait for it to come around, you can, use your brush to even it out a little bit. Or, as I mentioned, go to that next guide or the second or third guide.
Check it.
And then come back again
Okay.
and see if it leveled out.
Yeah.
With epoxy, what I've noticed is the less work you put into it, at least for me, the better it handles. If I sit there and try to manipulate it and put too much on, it tends to just turn out worse. So
I feel like you can overwork epoxy.
Yeah.
It's one of those, you want it to be so perfect, and you should have just stopped
exactly.
3 minutes ago, and you'd have probably been okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Good tip.
Okay, what else
Good,
you got?
good tip. Grady's got a question. Is it okay to fill the syringe completely and use what you need and leave the rest in the syringe for a couple days or week? So, Grady, you can do that if you really need to. And the reason that that's okay is we also have pre-filled syringes. We got those 24 mLs. They come loaded.
Yeah.
And if you need to use those, you can put the cap back on and set it aside. Now, in an instance that you see the syringes in the bottles, I really just, like Hunter showed, draw out what you need, put it in the dish, and just put the empty syringe back in the top of the bottle. There's really no reason, per se, to leave finish in the top of that. But yes, you could, if you needed to or wanted to, whether it's in the bottle or it's in that syringe, you're good to go. As long as it's not mixed, or as long as you're not introducing any outside contaminants, it's all going to be good. So.
And last but not least, we have to talk about the alcohol torch.
Okay.
Or, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of you guys probably, if you have an FSB or if you've got one in the past, the alcohol burner,
Yep.
the glass alcohol burner, awesome. So
Or a heat gun, right?
Or a heat gun too.
Okay.
So this kind of goes along the same lines as the finish. Use a little amount. You know,
Yeah.
you don't want to come up here, you know, right next to the guide wrap.
Yeah.
You have a chance to, you know, either make the finish run really crazy and off the rod blank,
Sure.
or off to the side, or maybe you damage the guide or the threads or
The blank.
so yeah, or the blank.
You know?
So you really just want to go, you know, not too close, but a little close, but just very quickly.
Yeah.
Just kind of in and out. And what that does is it's actually going to help that finish level even more.
Yeah, I mean, in 1 or 2 passes, you can see it.
Yep. It's almost like glass.
Yep.
And what that does, a couple things is, for one, if there are any bubbles left whatsoever, they're gonna go away. And then also, if you have too much epoxy on here, it will actually, it'll fall right off.
Okay.
So, you know, if you put way too much epoxy on here, and, you know, earlier I kind of, you know, got it off there with the brush.
Yeah.
If you didn't want to, you could use heat to kind of manipulate it, and that epoxy is going to thin out, and it's just going to run right off the blank.
Yeah, the weight of the epoxy will make it sag and drip off.
Yep.
Okay.
But again, you just want to kind of go real quick in and out, and then just let it rotate a little bit and do the same thing. And just that few seconds of heat from this alcohol torch is going to help you tremendously.
Because it's hot.
It is very hot. Yep.
Perfect. All right. That'll work.
All right, what else we got?
Jeff's got a question there. Kayak fishermen can be hard on guides. Is there a better guide to use when you know they will be beat on? Jeff, in that instance, you might want to look at the SSR series. So the SSR series is a set of guides that has no ceramic insert. The insert is actually a double swaged stainless steel insert, okay? So we're talking, you can bang it against a wall, you can step on the guide, you can do things like that, and there's no ceramic insert to break and come out of the metal ring, all right? So that is a guide set or a type of guide, you know, it is a CRB branded product. An SSR, they make a regular concept style spinning, they make a match style spinning, which is a very tall spinning guide. They make a double-footed casting, a single-footed runner, all of that stuff. We even make, in that lineup, we make really, really nice tip tops for regular size rods, all the way down to ice rods. I mean, in the SSR, it's the only series out there that I know of where you can get like a 6 diameter ring with like a 3 tube or a 2.5 tube. So if you're building an ice rod, you can use an SSR top on that, just like you can use an SSR top on a flipping stick that has like an FP936. Maybe you want to use a 6 ring, but it always comes with a 6.5 tube. You can use an SSR there, or you can use that same top down in a 2.5 or a 3 tube for an ice rod. So Jeff, check out the SSR line of guides. If you've got to have something with an insert though, the LZR is going to be the one. It's the most durable, it's going to be the lightest, it's the thinnest ring, so it's worth the money. But I would check the SSRs for sure. Give them a test. I've used them in saltwater, we've used them with braid, fluorocarbon. They've been good. I wouldn't worry about them at all, so give them a try. I think you'll like them, Jeff.
Greg, how long should you wait before adding a second coat of epoxy? That's a great question, and highly, highly debated, I would say.
Yeah.
Greg, you want to wait at least until the finish is almost all the way set up, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
You don't want to do it, obviously, right now. You know, you would need to wait at least, I would say, 6-8 hours minimum.
Yeah, minimum.
Until it's not fully cured, but almost fully cured.
And that's why you keep your dish.
Exactly, yeah.
Now Hunter, used high build tonight. It's what we had on the table. The high build will cure quicker than the standard Pro Coat or in general terms, a high build finish from any manufacturer tends to cure faster than a light build or a medium build from the same manufacturer. Just to get that out there.
Yeah.
I can't put a stopwatch on it and say this is going to be exactly 2 hours faster or 30 minutes faster, but a high build tends to get cured out a little quicker. But as you had mentioned before, leave your dish so that if, maybe you're a little pressed on time and you want to add that second coat, touch the dish, don't touch the guide, and you'll be able to tell. Now the great thing about the finish is you can add a second coat, whether it's, we'll call it 10 hours or 8 hours, or it could be 8 or 10 days.
Of course.
It doesn't, there's not a time expiration on it. But if that finish has been on there for any period of time that's longer than, a couple days, there might be some contaminants on it. If you fished it, it's okay, but just clean it very, very well because you want to make sure the finish sticks and you're not going to epoxy, some kind of, boogers underneath that finish that's got on it from, contaminants on the lake or any kind of things like that, a bunch of dust or whatever. So, yeah, you're pretty free to go. What else we got?
Tim, I always struggle getting epoxy level. It's always kind of bumpy when covering long areas like rod names, decals, etc. What suggestions do you have to get it level?
Yeah, I'll take that one.
Go for it.
All right, so if I'm going to cover a long section, I personally like the rod spinning towards me. So with this clutch, you can't touch the clutch and have the dryer change directions with a normal RDS. You have to grab back here on the actual clutch. So you can do that by changing directions. I like it coming to me. So we've got the finish on here. I am going to, if I'm going to cover a long section, I'm going to make about 99% of my brush strokes along the rod blank like this. What do we call this? Longitudinal strokes?
Sure.
Was that right?
I think so.
All right, get your thesaurus or whatever you want to call out. Ask Alexa. So you can add finish in, clumps, if you will, but I'm going to make 99% of my brush strokes out this way. And you can see as I make the strokes, I am moving the finish to the point of running out of finish on my brush. So as I push the finish across this rod blank, I'm literally running dry out of finish and it's like catching on the rod blank. But I just keep working the finish along the rod blank and I'm going to get to my end point, which we'll call that guide the end point. Now the only time I'm going to turn the brush perpendicular to this rod blank is to make a cut, like a cut in. So I'm going to lay the brush on the rod blank and you can see why I like the rod turning towards me, because I like to be able to see what that finish is doing as it comes around that rod blank. And I'm looking down onto my contact point. If the blank's going the other direction, I can't actually see where my brush and my rod blank make impact. So I can actually see where it's making an impact here, and I can press and flex that brush to make the bristles spread out and make it wider, or I can relax the pressure and make it thinner. And of course I kind of like boogered it up a little bit when I was doing that and ran it up on that EVA. There it is, somebody's mad. All right, so we have a cut in, and then we're going to go back to making longer strokes along here. And this is going to be one of those instances where if you're in a hurry, you better have somebody else do it for you, because when you want to cover really, really long sections of this rod blank, and I'm somebody that does not like to do 2 and 3 coats of finish, but sorry, this is going to be it. So I have now laid an absolutely just hair thin coat of finish. You can see it. It's pretty good. Where you got that? You got the heat there, Bubba? Sweet. All right. So now I'm going to come in and I have very, very little finish on this rod blank. And I'm going to admit, as you force finish across a rod blank and it like goes stir because you run out of finish and the brush like wants to stick to the blank a little, you're probably going to get a bubble or two.
Yep.
Just going to warn you. But that's where the heat's going to come in. And I'm just going to kind of add the heat. Always keep it moving. And I'm popping bubbles. I'm smoothing this out. So it's actually pretty good. Looks pretty glassy on there. There's a couple little bumps, but don't mind the zoom. The guy's got too good of cameras. So there's a couple in there, but again, do not attack that with heat all that much. As Hunter showed earlier, you can do a little bit and walk away from it for a minute. Let that finish help you. Let the finish help you,
yeah,
right?
There you go.
So, yeah, so it will kind of manipulate itself, work its way out, things like that. If things really start to get wild, come back in 5 or 10 minutes, check it. Then you'll be, then you'll have a little bit better idea. But do not attack this with a ton of heat and a ton of brush strokes and really working at it because you'll mess it up. So should be good to go there. Don't watch in 4K. All right, what else? That it?
Let's see.
Because you touched on, I know there's a note there about having finish drop off, but
Yeah, what else?
yeah.
I think that wraps it up.
Yeah. All right, that's it, I think. Cool. All right. So, we need to get to talking about rod building classes.
Yeah.
So, with all of this that we've just talked about, you can just take a class. You can get really, really good instruction from even better instructors than just us. We're kind of just what they found here in the warehouse. But in all seriousness, I don't even know how long Mudhole's been doing rod building classes because I'm going on like 7 years here, and it was rocking before I got here.
I'd say going on 10 years close to it.
You're 10?
No.
Oh.
Actually, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
altogether. But,
Right.
but yeah, I would say at least 10 plus.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that
So
range.
we'll call it 10 for good measure. I wouldn't doubt if it's more. I'm sure we'll get a message in here from Brooke or somebody because Brooke, 18 years he's maybe been here?
Yeah.
17, 18 years? So he would know. But it's really, really been a long time, and nobody else does it. I've sat in on them. They're incredible. They're really great. So if you haven't taken one, please take one. And of course, with everything that went on last year, we had to shift gears a little bit. And I think the guys and gals that not only that teach class, but people like Scott and Brooke and Todd and those people that make this whole show run with the classes outside of just the instructors. They were able to get the remote thing going. That has been really a great thing. So what we've got now is we have a Meet the Instructors video that Jay put together. You know how good Jay's stuff is.
Yeah.
So we got a little video cutaway here. We're going to talk about the rod building class here in just a few minutes. Jay, why don't you go ahead and hit that button.
How did I get started in rod building? I had a friend's dad who built a surf rod, and we learned the basics from that. And in 1999, I started building rods. And the reason for building rods was that I couldn't always get what I wanted in a store. If I found a rod that I particularly liked, it might be discontinued, and I always seemed like I was compromising with something that I got.
I started rod building in 1974, and a friend of mine they called him pier rats. He fished off of a fishing pier, and everybody built their own fishing rods. I said, well, that sounds really cool. So this is when I kind of went over to his house and kind of saw him build one by hand, and I go like, I can do this.
I got into rod building about 35 years ago, so I thought it'd be cool to catch a fish on a fly that I tied, and it was. Well, I said the next step is to build my own fishing rod. That's how I got started in rod building.
We all have that same bond. We all want to pursue catching that big fish and having that perfect rod to catch that big fish on. And they may not be available in your area or from the stores that you buy from. So by being able to build your own rod, you can really accomplish a great deal of satisfaction.
Being an instructor for the mud hole rod building classes is really neat. I've improved my rod building skills quite a bit, and I get an immense amount of pleasure from seeing somebody kind of get it.
Teaching has been really good for me because I've enjoyed being around all the people that I get to meet. And like I said, we have a great common bond of building that perfect rod for ourselves.
The rod building classes have been very interesting because as everyone knows, we go all across the country to do this. I learn every class I go to. Every class I go to, I learn something, which makes me a better rod builder and a better instructor. But I think it's the enthusiasm that these people have for this class, that type of enthusiasm, you can feed off of that. That will help them learn a lot better in the class.
The hands-on experience of having somebody show them how to do it makes it so much easier. So it turned out to not be anywhere near as hard as they thought.
I would recommend the mud hole rod building classes to anybody that wants to get started in rod building, as the class environment puts them in a classroom with people that are having the same issues that they're having trying to get started and stuff. And so they don't feel like they're out of place. They feel like they're getting done at the same time everybody else is. Everything's working out well. And you've got 4 or 5 teachers that are helping you out to get you through that process. And they've got every answer in the book.
I polled all the instructors how many years they'd been in rod building. And it was 170 years in rod building experience standing in that room. So to have that accessible to you, where you can ask any question whatsoever on any type of fishing rod and learn how to build a fishing rod, that's huge.
I mean, to me, it's going to, elevate the whole fun of fishing to a new level. To be able to catch a fish on a rod that, I built by hand, that's got my name on it, is going to make fishing an even better experience than it already is.
All right, so that was a little meet the instructor. So what'd you think, Hunter? Oh, we got Buzz. Buzz is in the building. It's Detective Butters at your service. He is here, and how was it?
It was great. I found it interesting, the blunders for beginners.
Yeah.
It could have been Buzz's beginning in rod building, because I made all the exact same mistakes that you guys did.
Sure.
And I know this isn't in the outline, but I just wanted to veer off it a little bit. I think the rod builders, the new rod builders, don't understand that a while ago none of this was available.
Sure.
I mean, I've been in rod building for 40 years, and 40 years ago there was no internet.
Yeah.
There were no cell phones. Fax machines hadn't even been invented yet.
Sure.
And I think there was one book on rod building that I didn't know about. There were no classes, and I was shown how to wrap a guide wrong, and that's how I started in rod building.
Sure.
So there was a lot of time and frustration and money that was spent that, it was tough to learn.
Sure.
And now you've got Facebook Live with you and Hunter and Jay and Guff in the crowd. You've got, I've been involved with the rod building classes for 9 years, and it was going on long before that.
Sure.
Todd Vivian, who's not only the coordinator of the in-person classes and the virtual classes, but he's an active instructor.
Yeah, I think he's the head instructor.
He's the head
That's
instructor.
what they call him. Absolutely.
You've got an instructional staff that's getting trained and retrained on a regular basis. Anthony does the education program where he's teaching high school teachers how to teach rod building to their students.
That's great.
So the amount and the quantity and quality of the rod building information that's available today is amazing.
Right.
So I just want to say, as a rod builder, thank you, Mud Hole, for all of that. So
Well, we appreciate
really
it.
appreciate
And
that.
I can't tell you, Buzz, we, Hunter and I especially, and a lot of us, we didn't invent any of this stuff. It was you guys back then, coming through and doing it. It's guys like you and Hunter's dad, Bob, and people like even, Billy Vavona and guys like that have been such an ambassador to the craft and the sport that, we come up with tips every now and then. We might stumble onto something as a young rod builder, but we're not inventing anything really anymore, and we appreciate you and those guys that do that. So, but hey, welcome.
Thank you.
You're here. What did you think? So you sat we had you in the green room a little bit.
Yeah.
You had all your fancy, we had flowers.
I saw that. The makeup room, I really appreciated the makeup room. So that turned out quite well.
He had to have all of his MHX green colored M&Ms. He wouldn't eat any other color. So
real prima donna of the rod building.
That's it.
That's me.
That's it. Cool. So now you have done both.
Yes.
You have done the in-person classes.
Yes.
Which were, what were we doing? How many cities would you say?
In 2019 BC, before COVID.
Yeah.
We did 22 classes nationwide.
Okay.
And that included a couple in Orlando. That was before. Well, no, I think we just started teaching in this building.
Yeah.
22 classes nationwide, and by my math, that was a little over 900 students face-to-face in 1 year that we did rod building. That's beginning, intermediate, and some advanced levels.
Right.
This is not just a beginning class. There's a lot going on there.
Of course, because when you do back then,
yes,
because I know we've adjusted it a little bit, you had day one where you really did everything.
Yes.
And then you put your finish on the rod the night of day one, which is usually a Saturday.
Yes.
The Sunday you come back and everybody gets to admire what they've done, but then you guys also had like a little bit of a show and tell of advanced techniques, right?
Absolutely. We had 4 hours of probably 12 or 13 advanced techniques.
Yeah.
Everything from custom grips, total rod repair, thread work, marbling, magic marbling, abalone.
Right.
It goes on and on and on.
Absolutely.
And so we would do that for 4 hours, and then the students would take their rods home, and then they could head home. So
for sure.
You hit it right on the head. The Saturday was an all-dayer.
Okay.
From starting out with how to spine your rod, reaming your grips, epoxy, wrapping the guides, prepping it, lining up the guides, putting on the finish. Okay, put the rods in the rod dryers now overnight, and then in the morning we did advanced demonstrations.
Sure.
So that was the 2-day basic class. Yes.
Right. Yeah, and it was interesting because you look at the clock and you're like, okay, it's going to be 8 to 5. Like, wow, this might be a long day, but it actually goes by incredibly fast because the whole time you're learning, and then you've got kind of the camaraderie of people around you, kind of joking around. You guys are mingling through the crowd. If you catch somebody that might be struggling a little bit to start a guide wrap, or they're trying to get their grip just right or something, you guys will jump in and help. But really, if somebody wants to go at it and have really no outside help, you let them roll.
Yes.
Like you're not holding their hand, but
yes,
you're there to help out.
Yes, and we're there for every level of experience. We will get some students that will come in and say, I know quite a bit about rod building. I've built X number of rods. Yeah. And by the end of the class, they're going, oh my,
sure,
I didn't know near as much as I thought I did. And
absolutely,
so they can absorb a lot of information. We, the instructors, learn at every single class. Because if we're not learning at these classes, we can't pass on the new knowledge that we have to the students also.
Absolutely, because I think one of my first years here, a little bit back, I went to the Dallas class.
Yes.
So the Dallas class was, it was a great, but we go farther than that. I mean, you guys have gone to Washington State, you've gone to California, you've gone to you spread it around. It's not just like, oh, well, we can do 22 classes within a short distance of Mud Hole here in Florida.
No, we are all over the country, from both coasts, Midwest, everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes, Todd does a really good job of, making sure that we hit specific cities each year, that we have really good interest and turnout.
Right.
But then he also takes the rest of the classes and moves them around the country.
For sure.
Many students will walk up to us and say, we've been waiting 2 years for you guys to come to our area.
For sure.
And there's a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of excitement about those in-person classes.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, now with the new facility here, you know, we've got 80,000 square foot about under roof here at Mudhole. We have quite the education center, you know. So it's really gone from when I first started, we would do a local Oviedo class in like the ballroom B of the Holiday Inn Express.
That's exactly where it was.
Yeah,
Yes.
so now we have, I mean, state-of-the-art education center down here with microphones and projectors and big screen TVs and, you know, the big 4 gang dryers on the wall all over the place. And it's really even a better experience. And I think that you guys have done a great job because now we have specialized classes.
Yes.
You guys are doing surf rod classes, you're doing fly rod classes.
We're doing surf rod class this week.
Right,
As a matter of fact, I think we have a couple seats left over. So if you're still interested in getting in the class, get a hold of Mudhole. We've got the parts. You're going to build a surf rod from beginning to the end.
Yeah.
The fly rod class, specialty class, was very popular.
Absolutely.
We had a long waiting list for that.
Yep.
And what's interesting about the specialty classes are the basic class, you learned exactly what we just talked about with the basic class.
Right.
But with the specialty class, some of those techniques that we would demonstrate on Sundays, you are now doing on your rod.
That's a great point.
So we'll get together on a Friday night and you will actually do custom guide spacing for your rod based on where your reel seat's going to be, where you want it to be.
Exactly.
And we'll do all the grips Friday night, Saturday's wrapping and finish, and then Sunday we'll do the advance. So,
okay, that's great because
Yeah.
that's a great point. You know, you guys used to do like a 6.6 rod, you know, a 6.6 spinning rod or whatever for just the intro classes.
Yes.
So now you've got a surf rod. I think it's the 9-foot 2-piece, I believe, and yeah, you got a lot of butt section there to move your handle around. So now the guys and girls are working into what you said. Where's your handle length? How's that going to affect your guide spacing?
Yes.
Now you guys are branching out a little bit.
Yes. Yeah.
I love it.
It's a lot of fun. We have just a blast teaching these classes.
For
too,
sure. So now though, you guys have done a remote class.
Yes, we have.
Once the COVID deal hit. So Jay, why don't you go ahead and run that? Show us a little bit about the remote class. We'll come back after that here briefly, talk a little bit about it, and we got to give away a class.
Cool. Yes,
Awesome.
Let's do that.
Cool.
How do the online virtual classes differ from the personal classes? Boy, in a lot of ways. The first thing I would say is the pace of the class is so much better in the online class than it is in the person-to-person class. Having to build a rod in one day is the most stressful rod that you're ever going to make. Being able to break it down and do it over 2 days or 3 days at the individual's pace is a wonderful thing.
In addition, you know, the in-person class, I was in a room with probably 35, 40 plus people, whereas now teaching these online classes, you know, the ratio of teacher to student is pretty low. You have 2 teachers with 6 to 8 students, and there's more one-to-one instruction time with them, really getting to know them and helping them through their build.
How has Mudhole maintained the high quality of the teaching experience in a virtual class?
Mudhole, prior to launching the online or virtual classes, flew in their team of instructors, and we spent a week together. Through that process, we worked on different camera angles. We talked about how the supplies are getting to the students.
We have a lot of meetings outside of classes where we talk about things that work. We also talk about things that don't work. Secondly, Mudhole has provided good equipment for the production of the class. We have good computers to work with. We have good cameras to work with. We have support from the Mudhole marketing department and the folks both in computers and in production.
Mudhole has taken the steps to make sure that this experience is as good, if not better, than the in-person classes.
What do you say to a person that says they just can't learn online, but they would like to take a class? I would say that well-produced video on a computer where you can see clearly what's being done and you can hear clearly the steps that are being done is in so many ways better than in a classroom setting where you've got one person speaking to 30 or 40 people.
I've heard a lot of students say that they're just not capable of learning online. And personally, I can say from the experience of teaching the Mudhole virtual classes, online classes, that we've had the opposite effect.
The Mudhole class puts together a very good video and audio presentation that is not like reading a manual or watching a homemade video. What would you say to a student that thinks they're not going to get the one-on-one instruction that they might get if they went to a person-to-person class? I think that you're going to get a lot more one-on-one instruction because in the in-person class, we've got a lot less people to keep up with. We can spend a lot more time with each individual if we need to.
We have created breakout rooms so that if you're in a class and you need a little more attention with the instruction, we can put you in that breakout room. You'll be one-on-one with an instructor, and then you can come back in and join the group.
What would you say to a student that is a little hesitant about taking an online class? Before I started teaching these classes, I'd say I'm right there with you, brother or sister, but I would highly encourage them to give it a try based on what I've seen both in being able to teach it, in the quality of teaching, and in the results that we've gotten and the student feedback that we've gotten.
If you're unsure about taking an online class, reach out to any of the Mudhole staff. Ask them what the experiences has been of the students that have taken it so far. As an instructor, I can tell you after teaching numerous classes so far, we haven't had anybody that hasn't had success in the process of building their rods. We have a follow-up session to those in-person classes where the students can come in and see demos afterwards, and they like that session as well. I think that Mudhole does a great job of their online classes.
All right, so there you have it. We've talked about in-person classes all over the United States, including the ones here in the Educational Center at Mudhole Custom Tackle in Oviedo, Florida. And now we've also shown you if you can't make it to an in-person or you cannot make it here to Mudhole, you have no reason anymore. You can do a remote class.
Absolutely.
Now, everybody involved in the in-person class also teaches a remote class, right?
Correct.
Okay,
That's
so
the same group of instructors.
Perfect. Who we've got? So we saw Cindy on the video.
Cindy, Mike,
Okay.
Kurt, myself, Todd, and Jesus.
And Jesus, cool.
And hopefully I didn't forget anybody.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's everybody.
And Durwood's a new instructor.
Oh.
He just started and he's been at the Orlando class.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, he's local, right?
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. That's why I had you name him, because I didn't want to be responsible for leaving anybody out.
Thanks.
But yeah, no, that is fantastic. So again, you saw it there in both of the videos. It's at mudhole.com/classes. That will give you what class you want to sign up for, whether it's remote, whether it's here in the Education Center, and if you're going to be doing the entry-level class or the beginner class, or there's a list there for up-and-coming specialty classes. We had talked about the surf class that's actually this weekend, so if you are local, come jump in it. It starts Friday, that's the 23rd, I believe.
Yes.
All right, cool. So that's the 23rd, doing a surf class, and of course we've done a fly class, we've done an inshore rod class. I'm sure there's going to be many more. Throw in the comments there if you guys want to see, a specialty class. But tell you what, Buzz, it's always a pleasure.
That was fun.
We got to ice fish a little bit up in the Great White North.
That's
They showed us
right.
around. That was a ball, and I think we're going to be doing some walleye pretty soon.
I think so.
Okay.
I'm checking out some spots.
I'm
making some phone calls.
I love it. Well, a good walleye fish fry, I think you'll be there for.
Absolutely.
You'll
Yes,
be there for.
absolutely.
Perfect. All right. So as we mentioned earlier in the show, we gave away an Extreme Reamer set. We gave away the hand wrapper, the advanced hand wrapper, and the 18 spool thread pack. Now, right before the show walked out, I grabbed some hot sauce here. So we've got an M-Made Check-splosion. The guys did all of the design work for these logos here in-house. and Phil is all mad because he fixed the logos so that he could see them, and now I'm maneuvering them all around. Phil, I'm sorry, man. That's me, Birdman. That's all me. Anyway, we're going to give them away. So, David Warwick, we're going to give you one. Scott Mays, we're going to give you one. Gary Lindman, we're going to give you one. I'm going to move them around some more. Phil's going to throw one at me here in a minute. All right, so there you go. It's hot sauce. I don't know, does anybody even have these yet? I think these are like the first 3. I don't think anybody's got them. So, congratulations. You'll have them. They're actually pretty good. We tested them, did the logos. I didn't do the logos, but the guys that work in there. Now that was, who did the logos? That was Taylor and Hoffma, right? And Ryan. No? Ryan did all of them? Pfft, now we're talking. Ryan, you're welcome to stay for as long as you want, bud. Congratulations. That's awesome. Those absolutely look killer. Love it. Anyway, got the hot sauces out of the way. The big prize tonight.
Big prize.
We're doing a remote rod building class. Buzz?
And you get to choose the dates, weeknights or weekend for the class.
Okay.
And casting or spinning rod. So it's a great class.
Hey, you're the one giving it away. Give it away.
The winner is Casey Bolin Jr. Bowlin. Casey, congratulations.
Hey, all right. So that's cool. I love it. Wonderful. All right. So for all the winners, if you're on YouTube, Guffey's there helping you out. Holler at us, slide in the DMs, send us a message, an email. We'll get the prizes. If you're on Facebook, slide into the messenger there. Tell us you won. Hot sauce winners, slide in Facebook or on YouTube there. Holler at us. Let us know your address because we need to get the hot sauces out to you. And as always, guys and girls watching out there, thank you so much for joining us. I think it was a pretty good show.
It was a great show.
You
I
know?
loved it.
Well,
It was
I mean,
fun.
you were in the green room eating wings.
That
I mean,
was
let's
fun.
get out of here.
Darn
Yeah.
right.
So hopefully you guys learned a little bit. We tried to go through and you know, take a collection of rod building blunders, things that people have helped us with over the years and things we've helped others with over the years. Hopefully we touched on a few things. A lot of good questions came in tonight, so that was really, really nice. We went over the winners. Congratulations to everybody won. They're the giveaway. If you can make it to ICAST, 2833 is the booth. Hunter will be there a little bit. I'll be there a little bit. We'll have some sales teams there. We'll have Steve will be in the building. Stuart's going to be there. Brooke should be there. Who else? Is that it? A couple of the marketing guys are going to be doing some video.
All the instructors will be there. We'll all be there.
Right.
Yep.
That's right. All the instructors are going to be there. So thank you for that. That's going to be great. Come by, meet somebody, sign up for a class, check out all the cool new products. Also, Mud Hole Live's Rod Builders Workshop. It's there. It's on Facebook. You really should be a member. It's pretty good. Not going to lie to you. And all the products on the show tonight is over on the website, mudhole.com/MHL. So if you're looking around and you're like, what is that, finish tool that he used for run over there to mudhole.com/MHL for Mudhole Live. That's the tools and supplies that we use on the show tonight. And the next show, I don't know, maybe we'll get Buzz to pick it.
Sure.
All right, cool. Guys, girls, rod builders, everybody, thank you so much. For Jay and Phil, we had Guffey. I think Sean was in there helping with questions. Of course, Taylor, Hoffma. I don't think Steve made it out, but boy, he helped in the trailer. If you guys didn't look at the trailer for the show tonight, it's pretty funny. You ought to go back and look at it. So anyway, guys, thank you very much, Buzz.
Thank you.
My man.
That was fun.
I can't wait to go catch some walleye with you.
That was fun.
Thanks for joining us. Hunter's already in the green room. He's heating up some chicken wings. We're headed back that way. Thanks again. This was a good one.
2022, we have 16 nationwide in-person classes on the schedule. Hope we're going to see you in one of those cities, in one of those classes.
You got no excuses. There you go. We got 16 of them coming. All right. For episode 75, you picked a good one to be here for.
Congratulations.
Good job. All right, everybody. We'll see y'all in a couple weeks for the next one. episode 76. Y'all take care.